On this edition of Let's Explore This, we're going to be in Sayreville, a borough that is in Middlesex County, New Jersey, specifically, to talk about quite an important building, the Sayre and Fisher Reading Room. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1979, and this here is that very document, the document from which the information for this episode will be culled. Now, this episode is not going to be very long, though, as just stated, this is an important building, especially for the surrounding borough of Sayreville and even beyond. This building, the Sayre and Fisher Reading Room, is an expression of the paternalism of 19th century employer-worker relations. That statement sounds a bit awkward. Paternalism, possibly, but it reads as a force bestowed on both employer and worker relations. I suspect it could have been stated a bit better, but regardless, this building, it is a rare surviving remnant of one of the largest brick producers in the United States. The Sayre and Fisher Company was founded about 1850, and it became one of the leading manufacturers of fire brick, enameled brick, and regular building brick. Yes, this here is a photo of an actual vintage Sayre and Fisher brick. In fact, it appears that you can buy a large number of Sayre and Fisher bricks on eBay. Now, in 1876, when Sayreville was named after James R. Sayre, Jr. and incorporated as an independent township, it had no more than 100 residents in all of its 14 square miles. The identities of the company and the township were already, by that time, inseparable. A large proportion of the residents of Sayreville were Sayre and Fisher employees. By the time this reading room was built in 1883, Sayre and Fisher produced more brick than any other manufacturer in the Middlesex County clay region, with this here being an actual photo of a Sayre and Fisher brick mold. The company operated, for the benefit of its workers, a granary, a bakery, a slaughterhouse, a coal yard, an ice plant, a general store, and, for its own purposes, a machine shop and a blacksmith shop. Company housing included row houses and more stylish double houses for the managerial class. It was in this context of industrial self-sufficiency in a community created almost entirely by a single force that this reading room came to serve a double purpose. It was a recreational outlet for Sayre and Fisher workers, but it was also an advertisement for the decorative potential of the company's products. Overall, the Sayre and Fisher Reading Room, it is a 2-story rectangular building. It is 8 bays long, with a 3-bay facade. It is constructed of pressed and common brick, all crowned with a gabled slate roof. I am not sure if that is still slate today. I don't think slate has a tendency to bend at the ends like that, like what you're seeing it do right there. Sorry, but those look a bit more like, asphalt shingles. So I guess that is what now lines the roof. Anyway, 4 chimneys, yes, they do rise from the west wall. 3 are original, though 1 is a later addition. Aside from two small one-story sheds attached to the same wall, this chimney here is the sole exterior alteration. But I am not sure which one of those chimneys would be or would have been that sole exterior alteration. I mean, I don't think any of them could be called exterior chimneys per se, but yeah, they all look like they're popping out of the roof, so to speak. Oh, wait a minute. What about the one over there? That kind of looks like an exterior alteration. I think maybe that's the one they are likely referring to. Yes, it does run down the side there. However, there is no mention of this over here. That might not actually even be a true chimney. It does look like a flue encased in brick, maybe to appear in accord with the others. The windows on the long sides of the building, they hold large paned sash topped by segmental brick arches. Segmental brick arches? Maybe, but large panes. That one is, but even with that, I'm assuming that to be newer glass and not like the large panes likely being referred to. I mean, yes, it's very, very shiny, but if we move up here to those windows and even to those down over there, most of those appear to have 6/6 sash. No large panes there. Have they been removed? I guess, though, there's that. The facade windows, they are round-arched, multi-paned casements that hold wood frames. And the ground floor facade windows, they are given separate transoms to match the round-arched single-leaf door. The facade, it is treated as 3 separate areas by a molded brick cornice of sorts that divides the first and the second floors. Furthermore, the brick string course does give the gable a superficially pedimented appearance, enhanced by its deeply projecting eaves. Let's now move on to its eloquent decor. Yes, the facade is symmetrical, but its decoration might be termed picturesque as well. Terracotta, as well as cream and terracotta-colored brick, are used in both glossy and matte finishes. The central feature of the gable area, it is a large panel composed of brick and terracotta. An oval shape does bear the legend of Reading Room and Sayreville Hall, separated by a large ornate SF monogram. The oval, it is framed by a rectangle, the 4 corners of which hold the numerals which compose the date of 1883. This decorative panel is further surrounded by small terracotta plaques cast with quatrefoil and other geometric ornaments. Then, below this composition is a string course of vertically set polygon-shaped bricks, and all the openings, they are framed with bricks of contrasting color to produce an effect almost like coining. Between and beneath the windows are diamond-shaped terracotta plaques. But between the windows, yes, I do see those plaques, but below the windows, well, I do not see any plaques below the windows. Yeah, there are those at the bottom. Maybe those are what are being referred to, but those are not diamond-shaped. Those there appear to be more akin to a diamond shape, though they do appear to hold like quatrefoils, but they are different than those there at the bottom, which appear to not even be mentioned in the document. That's interesting because, well, there are holes here and there, like right there. Those holes there are beneath and sort of between the windows, I guess. But have some of those plaques been removed? I don't know, but I don't think those holes would be needed to insert plaques like that. So I would not personally say those plaques are beneath the windows, but just, I don't know, between them. In contrast to the vividly decorated facade, the side walls are accentuated only by a simple string course and, in contrasting color, segmental brick arches. Now, yes, this side of the building here, it is a bit hard to get a good view of. I mean, it's fenced in, probably with a more modern fencing. That right there is almost certainly a modern fence. Nonetheless, though, with the exception of the two shed-roofed one-story additions over there, much of the exterior here holds the same kind of decorative elements as this side. The reason I'm focusing on that is, I don't know. There's the color of the bricks that hold the arch. There it is over there. There it is there. That one there seems to not even have one. Maybe it was removed or something. Maybe there wasn't enough room, not sure. Then there's those down there. They all appear to be of the same color. I don't know if I'd call those contrasting color. Maybe the reference is to differentiate them from the surrounding brick of the main wall. I don't know. I doubt it. But according to local informants, the interior was originally divided into one large space with a small vestibule on the ground floor and two rooms of similar but unequal size on the second floor. The two rooms are both said to have held, or maybe even still hold, wooden floors. Both floors, reportedly, for many years, have been divided into residential units. So sorry, it appears I cannot get inside, nor am I able to find any interior photos. Well, that is not exactly true, because I was able to get a peek through this large door window. Just to show you, let's get that peek on once again. Is that a tiled floor I see in there? Reportedly, the ground floor, it was used for recreational activities, a gymnasium of sorts, and the upper floor it was used for meetings of fraternal orders, including the Order of the Red Men and other social purposes. Apparently, it is not clear what was really meant by the name of reading room. Possibly, maybe, nothing more than a genteelism of sorts, like opera house, I mean, were books at the time readily available? That seems to be a mystery. Well, maybe they didn't know at the time But you know what? There is this sign that I showed earlier, briefly that is, and it does say the second floor library was intended for company use, but students and residents were also permitted. And so that would mean there was once a library here, and the term reading room then, yes, it would therefore be appropriate. It does appear, however, that the so-called reading room, it was originally intended for the exclusive, or at least primary, use of men. For, you see, women, they seemed to have socialized at home or at church in this working-class society at that time. It has been reported, though, that by about 1910, dances were held on the first floor. The second purpose of the reading room, it was as a kind of billboard for Sayre and Fisher products. This can be appreciated by even a casual examination of the richly decorated exterior. The facade is ornamented with polychrome brick and terracotta, and there are the string courses, the round-arched window heads, the door and window surrounds, the small inset plaques, and the large date and name block at the gable apex. And yes, there are the 3 original chimneys that tower above the roof ridge. And as you can see, each is ornamented in an entirely different manner. All of this, discussed a bit earlier, does help to convey that second purpose. Now, as this map shows, this region once held a number of clay-oriented industries. In fact, that area over there is where a large portion of the Sayre and Fisher Company once stood. Although brick and terracotta manufacturing were the single most important industry in Middlesex County, that fact today would be difficult to deduce from the physical remains of the industries themselves. Furthermore, here in Sayreville, a representative stock of worker housing can reportedly be found. That must have been true in the 1970s, but I wonder if that housing stock can still be found here today in 2023. What about a water tower? The ruins of a 20th century power plant? A dilapidated mule stable? Yes, I don't think this is a mule stable, but it is a building made of brick, possibly dating back to the Sayre and Fisher years. But yes, all of those were said to still be present in the late 1970s, and even then, that was not much, because all of the other buildings associated with the actual works in the late 1970s were gone. Of course, though, this building here, it does still survive, even today, many years later, many years later in 2023. The building still is, after all those years, in good condition, with only minor repointing needed in spots. A number of the side windows are boarded. Okay, so, as you should be able to infer, that information comes from a late 1970s document. Today, it is 2023, and so, let's see just how it looks and what kind of condition it might actually be in. On the other hand, well, I should not have to do that. Actually, you have been seeing this building throughout the episode. You should already know how it looks today. I did not travel back in time. I have yet to get my hands on that kind of technology. Maybe someday. But today, the reading room, it stands on a major local connector in a neighborhood which is largely residential. North of the building is the site of the long-gone Sayre and Fisher General Store and main office, with some of the Sayre and Fisher clay banks beyond that. North of the building? Okay, I guess they mean that away? As far as the early store and company office goes, well, we do have a sign right here, like right here, on the banks of the Raritan River. This sign, it says that the company store was a training ground for company executives of the brick plant. The post office and the main offices of the company were located here. Okay, so do they mean here, like right here, where I am now standing? Or do they mean like around here, like within the larger vicinity of where the brick plant once stood? A large part of that today is this park. Then, that sign, it goes on to say that this general store served not only local residents, but also a large number of sailing vessels, barges, and other river craft. Okay, so I'm going to assume then the store may have been like right here where this boardwalk now rests. As far as this quote goes, though, the document only superficially discusses the relations between the employer and the workers. The use of the word paternalism, therefore, seems to be nothing more than a mere reference to the employer-employee relationship so endemic in capitalist doctrine. And with that said, the time has come for me to move on.